All right, we've got these two brackets here that add this support to this triangulation done. You can see on the other side I've got this one done. So let's move on to from these a similar bracket that goes right here. And I don't have a good pattern of that, so we're going to have to make one. And you know, this adds further support to this seat, shock mount, this whole rear part. And it also, this bracket that goes in here, I'll maybe make a sketch on this paper, but it will have a hole right about here, which we're going to have to kind of calculate, that will be used to mount a cross piece to mount the oil tank. Sort of a trapezoidal oil tank, many of you are familiar with on most of the Tritons and Featherbed Café Racers. So this bracket is important in that it offers up that mounting point for the oil tank. You can see this on a lot of the older frames, and so I'm just going to take this paper, kind of rough in where exactly this gusset or bracket will go. It's not much bigger than these ones in the rear. A little bit different shape, but I'm thinking something, it tends to just drop straight down. I'm thinking something like this. Just using my sketch pen here, let me draw that out a little bit better. Yeah, something like that. You can see again where it goes. And sort of in the center of all this, I'm going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole, fairly small, which we can enlarge as needed for the actual mounting of the tank. So something right around in here. So now I'm going to have to transfer this sketch over to a piece of metal, which I do happen to have. Alright, so I've got just a piece of scrap here. That's a nice thickness, very similar to the rear one. So I'm just going to put my paper template up here and make a trace. Alright. Yeah, so we're going to follow this contour and cut it out. Let's see if we can cut that arc. Okay, so continuing with these two, you could call them a gusset, you could call it a mounting bracket, but it, you know, obviously it's supposed to increase the rigidity of this whole connection between the seat hoop shock mounts, and this strong frame tube. So, you know, as I mentioned, these are also used in a lot of applications to mount the oil tank, which fits in this area here, and that provides a through bolt so you can sort of hang your oil tank off here through some rubber grommets, and that isolates the whole vibration, which, you know, as many of you know, cracks. So many oil tanks get cracks. So I've used this piece of all thread, just threaded rod here, to run through the two mounts in an attempt to keep these straight and level and tight, because they go here on the inside of the frame down tube here. So I've got this kind of roughed in. I've got it tightened in with these eared nuts, wing nuts, and then pulled up against this frame tube with a clamp. So I think, in other words, I think it's pretty, you know, pretty tight, pretty good. I'm liking what I see here in terms of the fit. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of tacks on this piece. And then after I get this one in, I'm going to remount this side over here, just checking for level and everything. So anyway, just to start, we'll mount this side, and then we'll kind of take it apart, reconfigure this, and tack in the second side. And as I've mentioned a few times, it's always good to have gravity on your side when you're welding, when you're tacking. So I've laid the frame over so we can get at this inside area pretty easily to get this bracket into position. So we'll do that now. One side, try to pick up this other side. Clean that just a little bit. That should do it. Okay, that'll hold that side in place. And now I'm going to kind of reconfigure this side. A couple of gaps here I don't like. Tack in the other side. All right, so here's the one that we just tacked, and kind of reset this side up. I have the same threaded rod, and I've got this one in position. I had to put a little clamp in here to kind of push it up and at a better angle so these two vertical lines match up, if you can see that. And I've taken my little handy dandy level here to make sure that that threaded rod, when it's through these holes, is level to the frame. I can get that in position. Yeah, which it is. So that'll keep the oil tank mount level, and we can adjust that a little bit since there's room in these holes to adjust it. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this side to hold this position. So we'll do that next. Okay, so again, we laid the frame over to get gravity on our side, but we've got this tacked into position, and so that's both sides in place, and we can let this cool a minute and then finish weld these when we're ready. So moving on to another bracket, I have this rear fender mount, which goes on the rear seat hoop, and it's just a piece of flat, you know, laser or plasma cut steel, you know, probably 0.50 thousandths, but it needs a little bit of a curve on it so that when the fender comes through here, these tabs can be shaped easier to match the contour of the fender. So I've got a roller from, you know, a die shaper here that I'm going to use just to put a kind of start a curve on this piece that I can, you know, then we can modify a little bit easier once it's got the fender under it. So just using this curve to make a little curve here. So I'm just going to kind of rough this in just as a starting point. And you can see it's coming around. It's got a rear tab here that will mount on the seat hoop, so I don't want to get any curve on that tab. I want to keep that straight. So let's just work this a little bit more. Not using the full strike here, just kind of choked up so I can control it a little easier. And I'm somewhat guessing here as to what this radius should be. Again, just to get started, try to put a little bit more on there. All right, I like that side. Let's see if we can match it. Let's see what we got here. Pretty darn close. I think I'll put a little bit more over here. Kind of need my wheel to be a little higher. It's kind of tap down a little bit. Drop the part in question. All right. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to put just a little bend in this backside here. Think I can get away with it. Okay. All right, so let's mock this up on the rear seat hoop, kind of see what we got. Okay, so here is where that fender mount will go that we just shaped. Somewhere in here. I'm going to take a look at a couple of pictures of these frames and see if this actually comes in at some kind of angle here to better hit the fender. I'm not going to tack it on real heavily or fully weld it until we kind of know We'll have to sort of mock up a fender on here and see where it hits, but that's where that piece goes. So I'll get it tacked into place. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the frame flipped from our last view, and that's so I can get a better angle on this to tack this rear seat hoop fender mount. And in looking at, you know, pictures and drawings of whatever I can come out, it looks like this is not flat against this sort of plane here. It actually comes down. So I've got my little welding magnet here positioned in a couple of centering marks. So you can see this is at an angle downwards, in this case upwards, but the frame is flipped, so it's downwards, so that as that fender comes through here, it'll pick it up to mount. So what I'll do is just put a couple of blobs here so that I can alter this angle a little bit more when I actually mock up a fender. So I just want to get it centered and tacked so that I can alter this angle as needed. I've got it, you know, a good guesstimate actually, of what I think it will be. You know, another aspect of why so many of these frames are different, even though they're factory. The Manx frames were different. The production frames were different. Over the years, there were subtle differences. You know, some of them had a bolt-on seat hoop, the early ones, I believe. So anyway, we'll get this started right here and have that to alter as needed, that angle to match correctly. But it's a good starting point. So we'll tack it up. All right, I got a pretty good blob here, holding it in place. I've got this angle, which I'm not showing very well. Yeah. So it kind of comes down just a little bit, and this just kind of thick tack will allow me to move this ever so slightly without breaking that. If needed, may be close enough. I've got a couple of fenders I can test with it. Okay, I've flipped her back up, and I've got an incorrect fender, but it's actually not too far off. So you can see how that fits up in our seat hoop support. And then down here, we're not too far off from where these mounting holes would go. And actually, I can see that this needs to come down just a hair more. So while the tack we put on there is still warm, I'm gonna bend this just a little bit if I can. Yeah, that's got a little, not sure if you can see it. Let's check our mock-up fender. I bend it a tiny bit more. Can. Yeah, it's going, not breaking so far. I mean, that's pretty close, in that you would want to have some rubber washers underneath these two tabs so you don't get immediate vibration on the fender. So that's yeah, it's going to be pretty close. So I'm going to go with it for now.